Hey, I want to put a podcast studio in your garage. I was like, will it make money?
Why life insurance is important.
Month 1 to month 2 was a 2X.
Interesting to go down that rabbit hole because there's so many different ways you learn.
I'm expecting another double, which would basically mean we're at about a 4X, after 3 months.
Let's go back to your journey right now.
Because of this studio and because of their membership out here, they're seeing growth inside of their business.
Today, we were sitting down with a man who has a problem in entrepreneurship, and that problem is making too much money. Over $15 million, actually, in that sense. Now, he has started business after business and has been successful in every venture he's done. We are sitting down with the one and only Jason Hawkins.
Thank you very much. That's quite an intro.
I've been trying, and they're hard. I have to talk really fast.
Yes, well, I will say that I am very grateful to have had many opportunities in business. Most of them have gone well. Certainly, there have been pieces inside of a business that have not gone in my favor. We've definitely had some losers in the portfolio over the years, but overall, I've just been very grateful for the opportunities that have been put before me. So,
absolutely. Well, let's go back to the start, like your whole business career. What was your first, let's say, like real job?
My first real job out of college, I was a financial advisor for Northwestern Mutual. So graduated from college, had no idea what I wanted to do. And saw a job posting out on monster.com. You ever heard of that? That was before you were born.
That sounds like MySpace.
So I saw a job interview, a job posting as far as a financial advisor. I'd always enjoyed just investments and different types of opportunities in that arena. So I went and, of course, honestly, it was a straight commission job. So they weren't really taking a big risk on me. Let's just put it that way, but that was the first, I'd say real job that I had. It was a straight commission job. I had a fair amount of success my first year. Compared to other first-year agents. I was definitely on the higher end of things, production-wise, but it was a tough job, man. It was a really tough job.
Now, I still don't really get what financial advisors do.
Yeah, well, and that was the thing that I struggled with the most as a 22-year-old who had never made any money. I was just fresh out of college, so I didn't feel worthy to call myself a financial advisor at 22 years old, because I didn't have life experience. I didn't have, what I felt was the credentials necessary to sit down in front of someone that's 10, 15, 20, 30 years older than me and expect them to actually buy into what I was selling. And, quite honestly, at the end of the day, Northwestern Mutual, they called me a financial advisor, but what they did, now they've changed a lot since then, but what they did back then was they taught me how to sell life insurance. So I was basically a financial advisor that sold life insurance.
Okay, so it was really selling life insurance.
Literally, yeah, that was selling life insurance. Now I did get licensed to, I got a Series 6 and a 63, which allowed me to sell some investment products as well. But at the end of the day, that model, their entire model back then was to take someone through the fact-finding process to show them that at the end of the day, they didn't have sufficient life insurance and that they needed more of that. And life insurance is really that foundational piece for any solid financial plan. So, so if they don't have the foundation strong, then we don't really need to move on to the next step. So that was really kind of the way that we would position it.
Now, I hear a lot of people talk about life insurance as like a way to like pull money out of your life insurance policy to get away taxes. So walk me through, why life insurance is important for a financial advisor or for you as a person.
So again, there's a lot of different life insurance carriers out there. There are a lot more different products within the life insurance carrier's portfolio of products. And there's a lot of good products and a lot of bad products. But, primarily at the end of the day, you can even have one product sold to you by one agent that's bad, and that same product sold to you by an agent that's truly looking out for your best interest and designs it properly and shows you how to fund it properly, that can be one of your best like financial pieces in your portfolio if it's structured properly and it's designed to benefit you as the customer. But that's getting kind of technical. But there's the premise of the life insurance is that once you get above a certain income level, you're somewhat limited on where you can save money after tax in something that's going to grow tax-free and something that you can access tax-free later. The biggest and most popular investment product for that would be the Roth IRA or the Roth 401k. Great products. But once you make a certain amount of money, you can't necessarily contribute to an individual Roth IRA. So with life insurance, you can put as much money as you can get into them. I've got, personally, I own, 7 different policies, and collectively I'll contribute more than $240,000 a year into life insurance alone. And the reason I do that is because it's really a glorified savings account that provides protection for my family. It provides protection for the family in the form of a death benefit if something happens to me premature. But at the same time, if I live, which I'm hoping to live, right? But I can always take that money back out of the policy in the form of policy loans. And because of the policy loan provisions, you can access that money tax-free as long as you don't surrender that policy. So as long as you work within the confines and the rules related to life insurance, you can treat it like basically like a tax-free bucket where you can sock money into it. You can borrow from it when you need it. You can repay the loan if you want to, or you don't have to. So it's a great vehicle to have. It's appropriate for, it's definitely appropriate for high income earners, for business owners, for people that make really good money. It's very, very appropriate. For someone that's making, $50,000 to $150,000 a year or something like that. I mean, yeah, max out you can max out your 401k and your Roth IRAs and stuff like that. And maybe just carry some term insurance, not be as big of a priority. But, as you get up there and you start making more money, you somewhat become limited. So there's a really cool thing that you can do with life insurance, is we refer to it as dual purposing the dollar. So basically, let's say that I've got $200,000 in cash value to life insurance policy, but I find a real estate property that I want to purchase. So instead of going to the bank and getting a loan to purchase that property, what I'll do is I'll go to my life insurance policy. I'll borrow that $200,000 from my life insurance policy, and I'll purchase that property. Instead of repaying a bank, I can repay myself if I want to, or if I don't, even if I don't repay that loan because it's a participating loan, it still continues, the full amount of that cash value still continues to receive a dividend or to grow and receive interest. And a lot of times that dividend or that interest that it's receiving is greater than the policy loan interest. So, even though I took $200,000 out of my life insurance policy, I might still be making 1 or 2% a year on that money while I've repurposed that dollar over here in this investment property.
Okay, so walk me through this from, let's go to a really layman's term. So I have a life insurance policy. I imagine the policy costs anywhere from $300, $500, $600 a month to have a policy.
It just depends. I mean,
depends. So let's just say $500 a month.
Yeah, you're putting $500 a month into a life insurance policy.
Now I pay that $500 a month, and then I can also put extra into it, right?
Yeah. So, again, if you're designing a policy, it depends on what the purpose and the intent is of the policy. If the policy is purely for death benefit protection, and you want to get the most death benefit protection you can for $500 a month in a permanent policy, then, it would be designed for that. But ideally what you're doing is you're going to max fund the policy because you want it to grow and accumulate cash value, right? So it's going to have a smaller death benefit, and you're going to overfund it. You're going to overfund the policy and get as much cash into it because you have to have a certain amount of life insurance to make sure that that there's limitations so that you don't, and there's rules with the life insurance companies that you don't want to ever. I wouldn't say you don't want to ever, but most of the time you don't want to mech the policy, which is make it a modified endowment contract, because if you do, then it becomes a taxable vehicle. But it really just comes down to, okay, how much do you want to save? What's your need for life insurance? But a lot of times, if you're someone that's young and needs a high death benefit because you got a young family and you're a higher income earner, you can always get an equity, a permanent policy that's going to accumulate cash value, and also get a term policy, which are super cheap, especially if you're young and you're healthy. I mean, you can get millions of dollars of insurance for under $100 a month, but it's like renting an apartment versus owning a home. Like, you're renting that life insurance policy. The insurance carrier is fairly confident that nothing's going to happen to you because you're young, you're healthy, and you're going to outlive that policy. And you're going to pay them, the premium for 20 years, and then you got nothing to show for it at the end, right? That's a term policy, and that's what people use to get a lot of insurance protection at the cheapest cost. But those are not your cash building policies. Those are not your policies that you're going to use to build a tax-free bucket of money that you can tap into for future use.
That's interesting to go down that rabbit hole, because there's so many different ways you learn of, basically how to not pay as much in taxes, like how to keep the money you make.
Right.
So that's good. But let's go back to your journey right now. So you sold life insurance.
Yes.
How much did you make?
Oh gosh. First year I probably made $32,000.
Okay. Back how?
That was in 2001.
So was that like, what is that equivalent to today?
Gosh, that was not 2001. Yeah, it was 2001. Yeah.
What's that like today? Was 2001? Was that 20 years ago? Dang, that was 20 years ago.
24 years ago. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I feel old too. It's like, it's going by pretty quick. But so what does that accumulate to? Was that like making 40,000 now?
Yeah.
25?
I mean, I would say, I would say $30,000 was, and actually, like I said, that was a pretty good year for a first year agent that's straight commission. Mm-hmm. I think I made like $32,000.
Okay. And then after that, how long before you went to your next endeavor?
I hung around in that space for, it was about 2.5 years, 3 years. And then I wanted to, like I said, I lacked conviction. I really lacked conviction. And the thing is, I mean, if you lack conviction in what you're doing and you're not enjoying it, you're not enjoying the process, you're not enjoying that journey, like, life's too short to be miserable in your work, right? So I just wanted to try to do anything. And at this point, I actually, I just want to get a job that I didn't actually have to sell something to actually make an income. I wanted someone to pay me a salary. So I went and worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and they had a great management trainee program, good track record. They hire a lot of, fresh out of college graduates. And they've got a great, management program that you can go through the ranks and do quite well. I mean, the folks that work at Enterprise Rent-A-Car from the branch manager level on up do fairly well. Now they work a ton of hours, but it's a great company. It's a great atmosphere. It was a very competitive environment. The structure was amazing. I learned a ton. I tell people all the time, if you can work in an enterprise rent-a-car, you can do anything. Like if you can work in a busy enterprise rent-a-car branch, you can do anything. I mean, I was literally in a suit and tie every stinking day, in a suit and tie, washing cars, picking up people, answering the phone. You got a line of people out the door. I mean, I mean, you would literally work 10, 12-hour days, and they would just fly by because you were busy the entire time. So it was a great experience, but at the end of the day, it wasn't, especially as you're upping the ranks, I think first year I might have made like $27,000 working at enterprise, and it eventually bumped up to where I made as much as like $50,000 to $60,000. But the thing I didn't like about enterprise was there were so many moving parts because it was a salary plus bonus, depending on how your particular business unit performed. And you could be having a great month and be very profitable, and a lot of things could be going right. But then all of a sudden you've got a new hire that's going out to a body shop to pick up a customer, and they get into a car wreck and they damage one of your vehicles. And now you've got a loss on this vehicle that you've got to eat at your branch because it came from your branch. And now all of a sudden that just wipes your profitability out for the month, and you don't get a bonus or a commission for that month for that. So there's too many moving parts in that to, so I eventually moved over into car sales. So I worked in the rent-a-car division, then I went over into car sales, worked in car sales, and that was a great model. That sounds awful, selling used cars, but it was a great model. Learned a ton. It was one of those things where people were renting cars from enterprise because they were in an accident, right? And so they were in an accident. And so we knew at enterprise who the people were that had a total loss, meaning their car was not going to be repaired. And they had to buy a new car, right? So we would reach out to them and basically just say, so it was built-in lead system, right? So I had built-in leads where I could just pick up the phone and call our enterprise rent-a-car customers and let them know, hey, we have a car sales division, and I could talk to them about, our value proposition at enterprise car sales. Had a ton of success doing that. I was, at the time, it was a top producer as far as a first-year car sales guy. I think I sold 120, I think it was like 125, 135 cars. I don't remember what the exact number was my first year there, and learned a ton, and got to drive a bunch of different cars, learned all about cars. But at the end of the day, I ended up leaving car sales and going into their fleet division. And that was really my ultimate goal, like where I wanted to get to. And I had interviewed for the job once, didn't get it, was totally bummed out about it. But that was ultimately what I wanted to do. I was an account executive in their fleet management division. But just once I got there, I realized it wasn't the right fit for me. And so I ended up leaving Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Enterprise, and I got to work in 3 different divisions of that company there and learned a ton, but got away from that, from the auto industry altogether, and then moved on to banking with Republic Bank in a non-traditional form. I worked for their tax division at Republic Bank, another great company to work for, take very good care of their employees. But honestly and truly, at the end of the day, I just got bored with the job. It wasn't really pushing me. I wasn't terribly motivated. And I really felt like I could have done my job in about an hour or 2 a day. The idea of having to go to an office and sit in an office from 8 to 5 every day, even though I didn't have anything to do, or, I was just bored. So ultimately that was my, I guess you could say my last corporate job was in banking.
So you did Republic Bank. You were, now through all these areas, you started out making, what was it, like 27, 32 a year.
Yep.
And then you were growing, you're at like 50, 60, did car sales.
Yep.
When did you finally start getting that 100K plus mark?
When I worked at Republic. When I worked at Republic Bank in their tax division, we had a experience. There were a few market things that happened in our particular industry. Like I said, I was in banking, but it was non-traditional banking. They have a tax division, and we had a situation where one of the big banks within our industry was going out of business. They were getting out of that particular sector, that market sector. And so there was a ton of business out there to be snatched up, and we had a great year, and I remember my bonus that year was like $40,000 or $45,000. So that was the first time I'd made right around $100,000 a year when I was at Republic Bank, and that was a frustrating thing as well. Like, that was the first time where I really felt that corporate ceiling that kind of lingers over your head in that environment, because I would literally go in for my review with my managers and folks at CEO at Republic, and I would meet with them and be like, hey, and I had this whole presentation like, hey, these are all the accounts I closed. This is how much volume they did. I knew how profitable they were, and I would show them how many millions of dollars I brought in for the bank through these relationships, and how we were achieving growth and success, and requested a raise. And basically, what they told me was, we can't do that because you're at a level, whatever position I was in, the tax division was the same level in their traditional banking system as a branch manager. And they said, you're already making more money than our branch managers. And we can't give you a raise because you're already making more money than you should be making at that level of an employee. So I was like, so that's when I just knew immediately, like, I had to get out of there. Like, so I actually left Republic and went to another bank. And they started me out. I was making a total of like $100,000 a year working at Republic. And that was with a $60,000 salary or $50,000 salary in bonuses, if we had a good year. And this other bank they offered me $125,000 a year salary out of the gates. So that was guaranteed. So, and I got to work from home. It was much more flexible. So that was great. Actually, that was a great time in my life. Like I'd went from, I had a nice salary job making about $125,000 a year. And I spent a lot of time on the golf course, played a lot of golf because I worked from home, lived on a golf course. And so, I would work a little bit in the morning. I'd, go out and play some golf, work a little bit after the golf round. And I was in sales too. So I always had my phone on me. So if someone needed me, I could still, even while on the golf course, take care of business. But yeah, so that was, and I was very, very comfortable in that role. I mean, life was great. I was making, what I felt like at the time was decent money, and our bills were taken care of. But ultimately that bank ended up going out of business. They ended up closing after like 3.5, 4 years, and it really forced me to change. And I went and got a job with a small software company in the same industry, worked for them for a number of years as an employee. But the cool thing about that company was I worked as an employee for that company, but the ownership of that company, they were very much entrepreneurs. And they were very supportive of me doing like other things if I had other ideas or other opportunities. Like, it wasn't like you're an employee, just you can only work for us. It was like, hey, yeah, no, it's great. They encouraged outside opportunity. But even at that, like, I mean, I went from banking to software, and I went from $125,000 a year to as much as $185,000 a year working on the software side of things. But really where it took a turn for me financially was while I was working for UTAX, which was the company that eventually got bought out in the last couple of years. But while I was working for UTAX, I was working as an account executive in sales with them, account manager, account executive. And every year I would have conversations with people that wanted to buy our product. They wanted to buy our software. And I had to tell them no, because they were lacking what in our industry is called an EFIN number, electronic filing identification number. And so I saw that we were missing out on sales. We were missing out on opportunities. And so I went to ownership and said, hey, what can we do to, provide a solution for these people? We're missing out on this business every year. And they basically said, Jason, we're not interested in being in the tax prep business. We sell software. and we're not interested in being in the tax prep business. And they said, I said, is it okay if I create a solution for it? And they said, yeah, go for it. So they allowed me to create what is known today as TaxFeeder Software. That's one of my companies. That's my most profitable company to date that I own. That was fantastic because I was working for the software company, making a good salary and bonus and commissions and all that stuff of anywhere from $150 to as much as $230,000 a year working for them. But at the same time, I was building my company over here on the side. And it got to a point where my company was actually making more money than, I was making more money running my company on the side than I was making running, this particular, working in this particular position. So, but it was great. I loved my position. It kind of fed into my business because again, every year I was having those conversations with people that needed the software, needed an EFIN, needed all the things. And then I could just say, oh, great, I've got you over here. So I was able to systematically grow that business while I was still, had a salary and bonus and commissions and everything to cover my life expenses, right? So that was kind of my journey. And that's kind of the stair step as well from an income perspective of kind of how it stepped up over the years.
Now we did TaxFeeder, like kind of that origin story. Now there's Tradeline and there's Common Ground. Where are those two? And the Airbnb, like where are these coming into?
Okay. So let's start with Tradeline Services. Tradeline Services is a fascinating story. So I was at a conference every year in the tax industry. The IRS puts on these conferences. I know that sounds super exciting, but they put it on these conferences in like 5 or 6 different cities every year. And I'll never forget, I was in Orlando, Florida at the IRS Tax Forum. And I was trying to sell someone software and I invited them to go to lunch and we were sitting at this diner inside of the hotel. And, I'm telling him about all the great reasons why he should be doing business with me at the software company. And like, I'm having, full on sales pitch and, and he is so not interested in anything that I'm talking about or anything that I'm selling. And so I got the vibe and I was like, okay, well, folded up my stuff and kind of sat it over here on the table and said, okay, obviously you have zero interest in anything that, that I am trying to sell here. So tell me about, what interests you? Because obviously you're not very interested in your tax business or your tax software resale business. So what's got you going these days? And he said, well, he said I'm into Tradelines and lending. I said, okay, I know what lending is, but I have no idea what a freaking trade line is. And he explained it to me. A trade line is, anything that's on your credit report. It could be a mortgage, a car note, a home equity line of credit, all of your credit card accounts. But he said specifically, we focus on authorized user trade lines. Authorized user trade lines are trade lines like your credit card accounts. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, the way a trade line works is if you add someone as an authorized user on your credit card account, you can help them build credit. They get to inherit your history in 30 days or less. And I was like, that's stupid. Why does it work that way? You tell me I can add someone to my trade line and in 30 days, they're going to get to inherit 10 years of work that I've put in on this credit card account and building all this history. He's like, yep. And I said, well, that's not fair. He's like, no, not necessarily fair. He said, but they'll pay you to do it. So you can make money for your good credit standing, your good credit history on your trade line. And I said, I've got good credit. I've got good trade lines. I said, can I offer my trade line up to you? So that's how Tradeline Services started. I basically had a single trade line. It was a Chase Southwest card that I was using for all my travel and stuff. And so I started working with this one company, and I was helping people build credit by adding them as authorized users on my trade lines. And then eventually the demand became greater than my supply because I only had the one trade line. So I started shoulder tapping some buddies and just tell them what I was doing. And And, they started putting trade lines in inventory, and I was kind of brokering the deals and making a little bit of money. Everybody's making a little bit of money. And so, that was back in 2016, and here we are today. I mean, Tradeline Services I'm really excited about, the future of Tradeline Services. It's going well. I just appointed a new CEO of Tradeline Services last month. His name's Dennis Plaxon. He's been one of my top resellers for the last 3 years. I think his office alone, his company alone, has purchased more than $350,000 of trade lines from Tradeline Services over the last few years, and so he was a perfect fit. He and I have worked together, just in that business relationship, and he's got a lot of great ideas for growing and scaling that business. And he can give it the time and attention that I wasn't necessarily able to give it, because it was never really a priority for me. It was always just kind of a little side hustle, but again, it was a side hustle that was doing between $20,000 and $40,000 a month of sales. So, I mean, it was a good little side hustle.
It's always funny how the side hustles can grow to the thing you never thought it would be. The podcast studio started as a side hustle for me.
Yeah.
It was such a little, I was like, man, I don't even care if people do it. Because it was like $200 a month at a studio downtown that I was like, I get a place to shoot content, whatever. And then it just kept growing, and I was like looking at transactions. It's like, okay, we're doing 15, 20K a month. I was like, this isn't bad. And I was like, what if I put, and we've been really into the science of scaling recently. We're really into that. And it's like, what if I just really focused on this thing? Yeah. This was my thing.
Yeah.
And then it started blowing up. So it's always interesting how when you put your energy into things, that's when they start to really expand.
Right. And the cool thing is you don't necessarily realize initially that there's a demand or necessarily a need for what you even put together. It's kind of the trade line industry, for example, I didn't even know that industry existed. But because I had an open mind and I was, asking questions of other entrepreneurs and business owners, you learn. Like I said, we're always learning. And, and I'd say with regards to the podcast studio, you saying, hey, let's put a podcast studio in your garage. I thought you were nuts. And it looks amazing. And, it's growing like crazy, and you're doing an awesome job running it. And, and I've received a ton of great feedback, on the studio. And, the other thing is it feeds into Common Ground. So you asked the question about Common Ground, how Common Ground, got started. So basically Common Ground is, I'd been looking, for ways to invest in real estate. I always thought it'd be cool to own a vacation rental or something on the beach, right? That sounds really cool. But and I'd looked for years. I'd looked in Gulf Shores. I'd looked in, the Destin area, the 30A area, primarily that kind of panhandle area. But man, every property that I ever looked at and kind of took a deep dive into, they just didn't cash flow. You were literally, if you hit your income projections, you'd make just enough money to cover the debt service, to cover the property taxes and insurance, and to cover all the HOA fees and stuff that you have within your community. So I never could pull the trigger on real estate. So, we have this unique community here in Norton Commons. There's nothing else like it. They're very, very proud of their properties here in Norton Commons, as far as what you get, as far as square footage and your price per square foot. But at the end of the day, it's a really great community. With my businesses, I was like, man, I was paying someone to use their conference room, right? And I was paying them $300 a month just to go over and be able to use their conference room when I had client meetings. And I was like, and I didn't love the space. It was an okay space. Didn't love it. But it got the job done for several years. But I was like, man, it would be awesome if we create a really cool space that people wanted to use, a place that people could call their office, their home, where they go and make things happen. And so that's really what Common Ground, kind of how Common Ground came to be was like, number one, I wanted to invest in real estate, but I wanted to invest in real estate that had the potential to cash flow after, paying for itself, to make a little cash flow. But then also I still needed a place to work and to run my businesses, and in a place where, you can do community and network and meet people like you. We would have never met had I not purchased this spot. So that's really how Common Ground came to be. And it took a little while. We've got the Airbnb upstairs. You mentioned Circo Loco. The designers, I've got to give them a shout out, Maddox and Rose. And then also Joey Spalding, who was the contractor on the build out and the design. Like their creativeness with putting together both Common Ground and Circo Loco, they did an amazing job. And it wasn't cheap. We didn't cut a lot of corners as far as cost. We were definitely over budget by quite a bit. But they did an amazing job, and we bought the building in April of 24. In August of 24, about 4 months after we bought it, the Airbnb launched. It was doing great out of the gates, doing between $4,000 and $5,000 a month of rental income. But that doesn't cover the note and the expenses on the building itself. So we were still finishing out the first floor and getting together, getting the co-working space done, Common Ground. And, but then we launched Common Ground in February. We opened Common Ground in February, and we've, slowly been building, the membership base on the first floor. And then obviously the addition, 3 months ago of the podcast studio has been a great infusion of, another income stream for this building, but also I love having you and your team here on a daily basis. I specifically prayed for you. I think I've told you that before, but I specifically prayed for you when this space was being finished. I wanted young people who were hungry, who were energetic, to be around, to really, because you all have such a different skill set than what I have. And so I wanted to, for us to be able to complement one another. And it's just been, I'm grateful that, Common Ground and, Circo Loco, they're continuing to do well. And, at least they're generating enough income now to pay for themselves. And we're getting very, very close to cash flowing. It's taken a little bit longer than I would have liked, but we're getting there. And thanks to the podcast studio and your help, running the space down on the first floor. So
yeah. Now tell me, what's the process been like? Because I remember whenever I pitch people the podcast studio idea, it's just such a foreign, like there's a market for that. Like that's a thing.
Yeah.
So walk me through what that what that investment's been like for you. Cause I came to you as I honestly wasn't even trying to be an investor. You're like, hey, go 50-50. I was like, I wasn't expecting that at all. But walk that process. What has that been like as an investor standpoint?
Well, it's been great. So like when you came to me, it's like, hey, I want to put a podcast studio in your garage. I was like, will it make money? And you said, heck yeah, it'll make money. It'll be great. And I was like, okay. I wouldn't do anything but parking my car in here. So it was like, yeah, let's give it a try. You laid out very clearly for me what our upfront cost was going to be. We decided to split that. And you did an amazing job standing this up in like 30 days. It was like 30 or 45 days. You stood this place up and we were operational. And just to see we're not even done with our third month yet here in this space. From month 1 to month 2 was a 2X, right? Mm-hmm. I'm expecting another double, which would basically mean we're at about a 4X after 3 months. And so, it's been a nice, consistent growth pattern, as people find out, about the studio, another thing that I think, I think people appreciate more than anything is, the studio is great. It's got a great setup. You've got the equipment is very high end. You do a great job with that, but also, the processing time for you to record, and get them their content and be able to get that out there is like, you guys are so efficient. And so I think that's really what attributes to your overall success with the podcast studio is, and your differentiator is, you guys are very, very efficient. You make it super easy. You literally show up and talk, and you all take care of everything else. And so I think there's a ton of value in that. And, and I mean, just looking at the value that it's added to our membership out here at Common Ground. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is of, I should probably know this. And I'm, and actually I'm curious to even look at it now, but what the percentage is of Common Ground members who are also now recording podcasts, who had never recorded a podcast a day in their life until this studio existed. And now, because of this studio and because of their membership out here, they're seeing growth inside of their business because of their connection here, which is super cool.
Yeah. Well, it's the idea of, so many co-working spaces decide to launch a podcast studio, and so many places have like they do it, but then they don't do anything that makes them different, or they don't actually full send it. And, as the 10X easier and 2X and science of scaling, what can we either remove or what can we partner with to really add value? Because I mean, there's a story in the book where I forgot the exact story, but a girl was trying to 100X her business or something.
Right.
And she ended up partnering with somebody, and that one partnership, that one conversation was that 100X for her business. Yeah.
She was actually, I remember that story. She was literally, I think she was at $1,000 a month, and she was like, I want to get to, 10,000 a month. And she was trying to do it by making individual phone calls and doing this, closing the business. And she's like having to carve out so much time every day to make all these phone calls. Well, then she's like, once she started thinking bigger, it's like, well, no, I want to go from 1,000 a month to 100,000 a month. And how can I do that? Well, I don't have enough time. There's not enough time in the day for me to go at it with dialing for dollars. So what she did was she found a software company that was already in the industry, that already had all of the users that she wanted to be in with. And so she went to that company and pitched them on, how great of a plug-in service this would be for their already existing user base. And so, just through that one connection and that one relationship, she went from, 30 users to 3,000 users, or 30,000 users, something like that. I mean, some ridiculous number, and that was all through just thinking bigger, right? It's not about, okay, well, gosh, I mean, I got to make 50 phone calls a day, right? It wasn't that. It was like, she started thinking bigger of if I'm going to get to 100,000 a month, it's not going to be through me making phone calls. What could I do? And that's where she went outside the box and was like, oh, I'm going to find someone that's already in with, the people that I want to be connected with. And actually she wanted to be in with credit repair companies. Mm-hmm. She wanted to be in with credit repair companies. And so she went to a company that was providing software to credit repair companies, and they plugged her in, and she was golden.
She was going. Now, after reading those two books, how have those books impacted your life? And what are the actionable steps you've done to now change it after just, reading those two books?
Yeah. I mean, literally, I just went through those two books in the last couple of months, and it has completely shifted the way that I think about my businesses. All of my businesses, I've been, I would say kind of smaller operation, I run them. I run pretty lean. We don't have a ton of expenses, and they're very profitable businesses. And, I always looked at employees or team members as a cost or an expense. But now I don't look at them as a cost or expense. I look at them as an investment into my business that's going to really help me grow. Because, if I want to 10X my business, I can't do it by myself. I need to find other team members that I can invest in that want to take the journey with me. And honestly, it's really changed my perspective. I'm having a lot more fun now because instead of being like a one-man show, I'm surrounding myself with good people that I want to be on my team, that I can encourage and they can encourage me. And it's more of a team sport instead of an individual grind, right? So that's been really, really cool and exciting. But, another practical thing I mentioned earlier that, I just brought on a new CEO of Tradeline Services. That was one of the things that I didn't have the knowledge or the expertise and the know-how in that particular industry, nor did I have the bandwidth or margin in my life to be able to invest what was needed in that business. So I basically took myself out of the CEO role and brought in who I believe is a very capable leader that can take that business and scale it to the next level. So you got to, let your ego get out of the way a bit and bring in another capable that's more capable than I am to really take that thing to the next level. So those are a few practical steps. I've also, it's not official yet, but I've got my eye on an individual who's actually working for me on a contract basis now for a short term that I would eventually like him to take over and be the CEO of TaxFeeder Software. And he's someone that has experience of being a CEO for larger software resale companies like mine, and I think is a more capable than I am that can really help me scale my business. So I'm making investments in people.
And with this idea of strategic partnerships with people with other businesses, I recently was interviewing another company called Red Tech Digital. You call them a competitor, whatever they are. I look at everyone as an opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
And, I got a chance to sit down and talk to them. They've done 10 million this year so far. And I was like, that's great. I want to be there. So how'd you do it? And I just got to have a frank conversation with him. And he mentioned a story that he had a contractor that he paid to run all of his Google ads. He was not great at Google ads, but he paid them. But he got to a point in his business where he was like, can I just hire you full time and just be my employee? And then I'll buy your book of business. And then he did that. And that was like a 2X jump for him. He acquired someone else and he was like, all right, I can acquire someone smaller, get their entire book of business and just do it a little better.
Yeah.
Because maybe they're not a great operator, but they're still good at the thing.
Yeah.
And it just kept scaling even faster.
Right.
So it's having those ideas where can I make these strategic partnerships to 2X and 5X, whatever it is. And I can get to this point.
Yeah.
And that all, comes from the books of the science of scaling and 2X and
yeah, in fact, and that's a great point. And actually, the individual that I mentioned that I'm looking to bring on at TaxFeeder Software as CEO, I told you I brought him on a contract basis initially, and the reason for that, and kind of what his primary focus is when I worked for the software company previously, my two largest customers are very, very sharp individuals. They've got a ton of experience in the industry as I do, but they bring different skill sets, different perspectives into the industry and into the marketplace. And that's one of the things that I am working on a merger of all three of our businesses to come together as one. So kind of like a three-headed monster instead of one, right? So there's a ton of value and again, that's kind of the same way. I don't necessarily want to compete against them, but I do want to work alongside of them so that we can all get better, right? And not viewing them as competition, but like you said, viewing them as hey, you're great. I think you're great. Let's figure out a way to work together. So
absolutely. Well, so we've gone through your whole journey, start to finish. What's next?
So what's next is, continue to invest in people and put the right people in place so that I can become more hands-off with, some of my businesses that I've been actively running and managing for the last, 8 years or so. And really to continue to look for opportunities, that are out there that, ways that I can, invest in others. And I like investing in good businesses and good people, in good real estate. So just looking for opportunities and ways to continue to invest in those things, and really continue to grow. I mean, I'm 46 years old. I still, feel like I've got, a lot ahead of me. I love what I do. I very much enjoy getting to come over here and work. And, I've got a ton of flexibility, but really, it's just continuing to grow, and, get better in every area of my life. Is, obviously my faith is a big part of my journey as well. I've really tried to invest a ton into growing in that particular area of my life, and then allowing that to kind of, funnel down into everything else that I'm doing. So.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for being on. Where can people find your businesses so they can work with them? Tradeline Services is tradelineservices.com. TaxFeeder Software is taxfeedersoftware.com. Common Ground is commongroundlou.com. Digital Retail Display, we didn't even talk about that one, but digitalretaildisplay.com. So what am I missing? Yeah, that's it. So, but thanks for the chat. And I'm looking forward to continuing to see this studio grow and continue to develop and work with you on many of the different things that we're doing together. I've enjoyed working with you. I've enjoyed working with your team, and have, you're an investment that I've made into helping me grow my businesses. So thank you for that. Absolutely. Thanks for being on too.